Welcome to Scoli Sleep Stories. Before we begin, take a moment to get comfortable, let the day soften around you, and settle in for a calm documentary made for curious minds. If these stories help you rest, learn, or simply enjoy a quieter part of the day, please consider liking this episode and subscribing to the channel. Now, when you are ready, let us begin. Chapter 1: Evening Streets and the Narrow Light. The last daylight rests upon the upper walls of the town. It lingers there because the roofs and towers still catch what has already faded from the lanes below. Pale stone holds a quiet wash of gold, brick settles into muted red and brown. Beneath the overhanging roofs, shutters are drawn inward one by one. Each moves with a soft wooden scrape before meeting its frame. A hand remains upon one shutter for a moment, making certain that it is secure. Then the hand disappears, and the wall is still. Around the corner, two neighbors exchange the final words of a conversation. Their voices carry briefly between the buildings, rise toward the open sky, and fade. Somewhere farther away, a cart moves over paving stones. Its wheels turn slowly and unevenly, then pass beyond hearing. This is an Italian town during the broad age now called the Renaissance, though no one walking here needs to give the evening such a name. To those who live within these walls, it is simply their town. It is a close gathering of houses and shops, churches and public buildings, courtyards, markets, and workshops. The streets bind them all together. Some are broad enough for carts and groups of pedestrians to pass with ease. Others narrow until a person might almost reach the walls on either side. Their surfaces change from one neighborhood to another. There are worn stones polished by many footsteps, rows of brick laid beneath doorways, and quieter paths of packed earth near the edges of town. Here, beneath your feet, the stones are cool. They have released the warmth gathered during the day. Each footstep sounds gently against them, distinct but unhurried. The lane slopes a little, then levels beside a shallow doorstep. Above, a slender strip of evening sky remains visible between the roofs. An evening bell begins to ring. Its sound comes from some distance away, round and measured. Bells do not follow precisely the same customs in every town, yet in many communities, church and civic bells help divide the day into familiar parts. Their voices gather people's attention without requiring anyone to carry a clock. One note crosses the roofs, then another. The bell reaches broad streets and narrow passages alike. It enters open windows, courtyards, kitchens, and rooms where the day's tools are being put aside. Its sound seems to touch the stones beneath your feet and rest there for a moment before becoming part of the evening air. A woman walks ahead with a folded cloth over one arm. Near a recessed doorway, a shopkeeper counts several small objects into a wooden box. Two figures cross an open square beyond the lane, their steps briefly lit by the remaining sky. From a nearby house comes the light clatter of a bowl placed upon a table. The town is neither busy nor empty. It is simply changing its pace. During the brighter hours, many workshops open toward the street, although their arrangements vary. Some have wide shutters or counters through which goods can be displayed. Some occupy the ground floor beneath living rooms. Others stand behind modest doors, with only a sign, an emblem, or the evidence of a particular trade to distinguish them. Now, most of those openings are being closed. A length of cloth is taken in from a display. A basket is lifted from a threshold. A door swings inward, revealing for an instant the dark shapes of shelves, and then settles shut. The air has cooled, and the stone walls seem to breathe out the memory of daylight. A faint scent of wood smoke drifts from somewhere beyond the next row of roofs. It mingles with the ordinary smells of flour, wax, dry timber, and evening meals. Ahead, the street bends. The corner is narrow, worn smooth where countless hands and shoulders have passed. Beyond it lies a quieter lane. The paving here is less even, and your footsteps find their places naturally. One flat stone, then another, then a shallow stretch where fine dust has gathered beside the wall. This lane contains the workshop you have come to visit. Nothing grand marks it. There is no broad facade, no marble stair, and no gathering crowd. It is an ordinary place of shared craft, one among many rooms where materials are measured, prepared, used, and carefully stored. During the day, its opening may face more freely toward the street. A passerby might glimpse a bench, a panel leaning against a wall, or someone bent over a sheet of paper. Now the doorway is closed. The people inside are not beginning some dramatic labor that must continue until dawn. Delicate judgments of color are easier in daylight, when subtle differences can be seen more reliably. Daylight helps a painter observe whether a blue leans toward green, whether a pale tone is warm or cool, and whether a painted surface passes gently from brightness into shade. Yet some work may continue after daylight fades. Documents from the Renaissance show that evening labor was possible. A Florentine apprenticeship agreement from 1456 even allowed work by day or night. That phrase does not mean every workshop regularly remained active late. Towns and trades differed, as did seasons, households, commissions, and individual habits. Still, in the calm hour after sunset, quieter tasks are easy to imagine. Tools can be sorted, paper can be counted and set in order, materials can be prepared for the following morning. An experienced hand can demonstrate a familiar motion while an apprentice watches nearby. Small lessons may pass from one person to another, not through formal speeches, but through calm repetition. Hold this gently, place that there, keep the surface clean, observe before you begin. The workshop at the end of this lane belongs to no famous master. It is not tied to one known city, one precise year, or one surviving painting. It is a fictional gathering place formed from many historical details, broad enough to hold practices found in different Italian workshops during different parts of the Renaissance. Within it, ordinary hands carry out ordinary tasks with patience. You approach at an easy pace. The evening bell has stopped, although its final note seems to hover somewhere above the roofs. A few words drift from a window behind you. Farther off, a door closes. Then the sounds of the town settle into a softer pattern. Muted footsteps, a faint rustle, a vessel placed carefully upon wood. At first, the workshop doorway appears dark. Then, as you draw nearer, you notice a narrow ribbon of light beneath it. The line is thin and amber, broken where the door meets the uneven threshold. It lies across the cool stone like a strand of warm thread. The light does not flicker wildly. It shifts only slightly, suggesting a candle or small lamp kept safely within, watched by those who remain in the room and placed away from loose materials. A shadow passes across the narrow brightness. There is a low murmur from inside, followed by the quiet movement of something wooden upon a bench. No one is rushing. Whatever remains to be done has settled into the deliberate rhythm of evening. You pause before the door. Its boards are darkened by age and smoothed around the latch. Along the grain, shallow marks reveal years of use. The metal fitting is cool. Yet from the slender gap beneath the door comes a trace of warmer air, carrying the mild scents of wax, paper, wood, and prepared materials. Behind you, the lane remains calm. The upper walls have lost their last wash of gold. The strip of sky between the roofs has deepened into muted blue. One shutter settles in a nearby frame, and then all is quiet again, apart from the distant life of the town. Footsteps approach from the other side of the door. They stop. A hand lifts the latch slowly. Metal turns against metal with a restrained click, and the door begins to open inward. Warm air enters the lane. Amber candlelight widens across the cool stones. Beyond the threshold, the workshop begins to reveal itself, little by little. Chapter 2. The Room of Benches and Shelves. The door opens just far enough for you to cross the threshold. Then it closes with a quiet weight, settling into its frame and leaving the narrow lane outside to the evening. For a moment, you remain near the entrance. The workshop is warmer than the street, though not by much. Its warmth seems to belong less to the season than to the wood, plaster, wax, and human presence gathered within. Candlelight rests upon the nearest wall, revealing an uneven surface washed in a pale, muted tone. Above it, dark beams cross the ceiling. Their edges are softened by shadow, and the grain of the timber appears only where the flame catches it. The room is neither grand nor bare. It is a working place, shaped by the tasks performed here and by the people who return to those tasks each day. A long bench occupies one side of the room. Its top is broad, sturdy, and marked by use. There are shallow scratches where tools have passed, faint stains where color has touched the wood, and smooth places made by years of resting hands. The bench is not arranged for display. Everything upon it has been placed where it can be reached. There is a flat drawing board, a folded cloth, two small containers, and a pale wooden panel whose surface has already been prepared for painting. Farther along stands another table, narrower and slightly lower. A stool has been tucked beneath it. Another waits near the wall, its three legs planted firmly on the floor. These simple seats can be moved wherever they are needed. A worker may sit beside a panel for close detail, carry a stool toward the window for better light, or leave it beneath the bench when more space is required. The broad shapes of the workshop become clear first. Pale plaster walls, dark ceiling beams, benches, chests, and the deep rectangle of a shuttered window. Only after your eyes have adjusted do the smaller objects begin to separate themselves from the shadows. Shelves rise along the wall beyond the main bench. They are made from plain boards supported by wooden brackets. Upon them stand jars, shallow dishes, stoppered containers, and small packets wrapped in paper or cloth. Not every vessel holds paint. Some contain dry materials awaiting preparation. Others may hold glue, chalk, pieces of charcoal, spare cord, or the ordinary things required to keep a workshop functioning. There is no tidy row of every color and tool an artist might possibly use. This is not a modern shop filled with ready-made supplies. Materials arrive at different times and in different forms. Some remain stored until a particular commission requires them. Others are used often and stay close at hand. The contents of a workshop depend upon its size, its wealth, its specialty, and the kinds of work its patrons request. No single room needs to contain every material known to Renaissance craftspeople. Its iron fittings are dark and its lid is closed. A second smaller chest stands partly beneath a table. Such chests protect useful or valuable things from dust, damp air, accidental knocks, and wandering hands. They may hold paper, drawings, cloth, records, patterns, or tools that will not be needed this evening. Above the smaller chest, several panels lean against the wall. Some are bare wood, others have pale prepared surfaces that reflect the candlelight softly. One is narrow and tall, another is broader, perhaps intended for a devotional object or some part of a larger furnishing. Their overlapping edges form quiet bands of brown and ivory. An easel stands folded near the far corner, though it is only one possible support for a painter's work. Easels existed in Renaissance workshops, but panels might also lie flat upon benches, rest at an angle, or be steadied in other practical ways. The arrangement changed according to the size of the object and the stage of the work. A small panel could be turned beneath the hand, a larger one needed firmer support. On the other side of the room, bundles and stacks of paper occupy a shelf well away from the candle. Their edges are not perfectly even. A few sheets are held between boards to help them remain flat. Another bundle is wrapped loosely, protected until it is needed. Paper is valuable enough to be handled with care, yet familiar enough in a busy workshop to serve many purposes. It may receive drawings, measurements, patterns, accounts, letters, or studies of details that will later appear in painted work. The nearest candle stands in a firm holder upon a mostly clear surface. It is kept at a sensible distance from paper, cloth, and any oil that may be stored nearby. One of the workers glances toward it from time to time. The flame is modest, practical, and supervised. It illuminates the evening preparations, but no careful painter would rely upon it for judging delicate color. In daylight, the window is the workshop's finest lamp. Its shutters can be opened to admit the morning brightness, narrowed when the light becomes too strong, or closed against rain, cold air, and curious eyes. Beside the window, a painter can compare tones and see the cooler truth of a blue, the softness of a gray, or the subtle difference between two earth colors. Candlelight changes these things. It warms pale surfaces and sets moving highlights upon glass and glazed pottery. It leaves deeper shadows beneath shelves and behind stools. Colors that appear distinct during the day may seem closer together now. Certain decisions must therefore wait for the returning light. Two people remain in the room. One stands near the long bench, seen mostly in profile. The other is seated farther back, arranging a few tools without conversation. They are quiet presences, yet they help reveal what the workshop truly is. A Renaissance bottega is ordinarily a shared workplace, rather than the private retreat of one solitary artist. A master might work beside apprentices who are still learning, trained assistants trusted with important parts of a commission, relatives who help with the business, and occasional specialists invited for a particular task. Instruction happens among ordinary activity. A learner watches, repeats, asks, corrects, and slowly gains skill. Workshops differ from one another. Some are small and modest. Others have more workers, more storage, or commissions of greater scale. A painter's workshop might produce painted panels, banners, decorated furniture, devotional objects, manuscript decoration, or temporary work for a festival. Finished pieces, partly prepared supports, drawings, and practical tools may all occupy the same room. Making, storing, teaching, planning, and preparing belong beneath the same beams. Nothing here is perfectly still, yet nothing feels unsettled. A shadow shifts when one worker passes before the candle. The edge of a sheet rises faintly in a current of air, then settles against the stack. On a shelf, wood touches pottery with a small hollow note as a jar is returned to its accustomed place. Now the details nearest you come gently into focus. The rounded end of a brush handle polished by fingers, the straight edge of a drawing board, a closed drawer beneath the bench, a thread caught at the corner of a folded cloth. Each object has a quiet relationship to a hand, and each familiar place suggests a task repeated many times. The standing worker looks over the surfaces once more. Then a broom is lifted from beside the larger chest. Its bound twigs brush softly against the floor as it is carried toward the open space between the benches. The jar rests securely on its shelf. The candle burns at a careful distance, and around the orderly room, the evening preparations begin. Chapter 3. Small Tasks Learned by Repetition. The broom is made from slender twigs gathered tightly around a wooden handle. Its tips have softened through long use. When they pass over the floor, they make a low, dry whisper beneath the beams. The young apprentice begins near the larger chest. He draws the broom toward himself, pauses, and moves a little farther along. Sweep, pause, gather. Sweep, pause, gather. Fine curls of wood, a few loose threads from a cloth, and pale dust from prepared surfaces travel slowly into a small, orderly pile. He does not hurry. Dust rises when a broom is pushed too quickly. In a workshop where clean paper and smooth panels are valued, it is better for the dust to remain close to the floor. This lesson was not given as a long speech. An older worker once demonstrated the motion, then handed over the broom. The apprentice tried it, received a quiet correction, and tried again. Much of a craft is learned in this way. An apprentice is a young person who learns a craft by working under someone already trained. In Renaissance towns, apprenticeship often began in youth. Arrangements differed from place to place, from one household to another, and from one workshop to the next. Yet the learner generally entered a world in which daily care and skilled practice were closely joined. There was no modern classroom timetable, with one lesson ending neatly as another began. Instruction appeared within the work itself. A master might demonstrate how to hold a tool, how to judge a mixture, or how to copy a line. The apprentice would watch, repeat, and be corrected. The same task would return on another day, and then another, until the eyes noticed more and the hands began to remember. Sweep, pause, gather. At the far end of the room, another young worker sorts small containers upon a shelf. Some are glazed pottery, others are plain earthenware, wood, or shell. Each one is lifted, examined, and placed beside similar vessels. Empty containers belong together. Covered ones remain apart. A chipped lid that still fits its jar is set down carefully, rather than discarded. Workshop objects remain useful for as long as they can be kept useful. The sorting is simple, but it is not meaningless. By handling the containers, the apprentice becomes familiar with them. She learns which vessel is easy to tip, which lid sits loosely, and which little cup is kept for a particular material. She notices the difference between a jar wiped clean and one that holds a faint trace of color around its rim. Women and girls also took part in artistic production during the Renaissance, especially in family workshops and in certain specialized settings. Their formal opportunities were often more restricted, and surviving records do not always reveal the full measure of their labor. This fictional workshop does not represent every bottega, the Italian word for a working shop. It simply gathers several documented possibilities beneath one roof. The precise arrangement of people and duties could differ widely. Here, in the calm of evening, each worker has a place in the shared rhythm of the room. Near the doorway, the sweeping comes to an end. The apprentice draws the dust onto a flat wooden scoop. He carries it away, returns the broom to its corner, and looks over the floor once more. Sweep, pause, place. Folded cloths now wait upon a bench. One has been used to wipe a drawing board. Another has protected a stack of panels from settling dust. The cloths are taken into the courtyard and shaken gently, well away from the clean paper. Then they are brought inside again and folded. First the long edges meet, the palms smooth the cloth. It is folded once more, its corners aligned, and then placed upon the pile. Fold, smooth, place. The most experienced assistant watches without seeming to watch closely. An assistant is no longer a beginner. This is a worker experienced enough to carry out skilled portions of a commission under the master's direction. In many Renaissance workshops, a finished painting could contain the work of several people. A master might establish the design and execute important passages, while experienced assistants completed other sections. Apprentices might help with prepared surfaces, repeated patterns, decorative details, or the materials needed by more practiced hands. The division of labor was not the same everywhere. It changed according to the workshop, the commission, the abilities of the workers, and the customs of a particular region and period. Surviving records often leave only partial clues. For this reason, modern scholars may find attribution complicated. A painting issued under a master's name may still preserve the work of several trained hands. For now, however, the experienced assistant is not painting. She lifts one folded cloth, squares its corners, and returns it to the pile. The apprentice sees the small correction and adjusts the next fold. Watch, repeat, correct. 2 drawing boards are carried from the central table. They are held upright one at a time, so their edges do not touch the pottery on the shelf. The boards are placed against the wall where the air can move around them. A smaller board follows. Its surface is checked for grit before it joins the others. In another workshop, or at another hour, an apprentice might prepare wooden panels, grind pigments, learn the careful methods of gilding, or assist with repetitive ornament. Responsibility often came by degrees. A learner first trusted with a broom might later be trusted with a stone and muller for grinding color. A hand that began by carrying a panel might eventually be permitted to prepare it, copy a design, or draw upon its smooth surface. Tonight, the tasks remain modest. A covered bucket stands near the courtyard door. There are no modern running taps here. Water must be carried from a well, a fountain, a cistern, or another available source, according to local circumstances. It has weight and its supply requires care. The apprentice lifts the bucket with both hands. Water moves softly within it. He crosses the room in measured steps and lowers it beside a work table. A little water is poured into a smaller vessel. No more is taken than the evening tasks require. The bucket is covered again, so that dust cannot easily fall inside. Lift, carry, lower, pour, cover, return. The smaller vessel may be used for cleaning certain tools, moistening a cloth, or preparing something for the following day. Not every material is treated with water, and each tool has its proper care. That knowledge, too, develops through demonstration and repetition. The learner comes to understand that order is part of making. A brush left misshapen, a board stacked while gritty, or a container returned without its lid, creates difficulty for the next task. Care at the end of one day prepares the beginning of another. Along the bench, tools are arranged by kind. Straight edges lie flat. Pieces of chalk rest in a shallow box. Brush handles point in one direction, with their delicate ends kept apart. A knife is wiped and set where an experienced hand can find it. Nothing is left too near the edge. The standing worker looks across the room. There is no signal that the work must quicken. One person finishes folding, another returns the water vessel, a third closes the drawer beneath the bench. Their movements overlap without confusion. Each person leaves space for the others, and each completed task makes the next one simpler. Place, look, adjust. Carry, return, rest. The floor is clear now. The cloths form a neat stack. The drawing boards stand in order, and the empty cups have been gathered together. The broom rests again in its familiar corner. Water waits beneath its cover. These humble tasks may not appear in the finished picture that will one day leave the workshop. No viewer will see the swept floor beneath the painted colors. No one looking at a gilded detail will know which hand folded the cloths or carried the water. And yet, such work supports every line and layer. It preserves materials, prepares surfaces, protects tools, and makes room for patient attention. The apprentices learn this slowly. They learn by watching where an older worker places a vessel. They learn by hearing a brief correction. They learn by doing the same small action until it feels balanced and sure. What begins as maintenance gradually becomes knowledge. Weight, texture, order, and proportion are discovered through the hands. Even a simple drawing board teaches something about clean surfaces and careful edges. Even a covered jar teaches something about preserving what will be needed tomorrow. The exact path differs for every learner, just as duties differed among real workshops. Still, the rhythm remains easy to follow. Watch, repeat, correct. Sweep, fold, place. Lift, carry, lower. Around the room, the evening work grows quieter. The assistants step back from the benches. The apprentices look once more at the objects they have put in order. Candlelight rests on smooth wood, folded cloth, covered water, and the rounded rims of pottery. Only a small group of color containers remains upon the main bench, set apart where tomorrow's tools are being prepared. Their lids are secure. A faint powder clings around one rim, catching the warm light. One container holds an earth-red substance. Beside it are yellow, gray-black, blue, and green. Their shades are muted in the evening, yet each has its own origin and character. Set in a quiet row, they wait like fragments of soil, stone, soot, and sky. The floor has been cleared, the tools have been placed in order, and now, beneath the steady candlelight, the colors wait to show how painting begins. Chapter 4. Earth Colors in Little Jars. The covered containers remain in a quiet row at the edge of the bench. Some are small earthenware jars with rounded shoulders. Others are shallow cups protected by fitted lids or folded squares of cloth. A few bear simple marks, so that their contents may be known without opening them. In the softened candlelight, the vessels seem modest, yet what they hold has come from soil and stone, from burned wood, and from materials carried between distant places. The workshop master draws one jar nearer. Inside is a warm yellow ochre, carefully measured and contained. Its color is like dry clay touched by afternoon sun. Ochres are naturally occurring earth pigments, found in soils and rocks. Their yellows, reds, and browns come chiefly from compounds of iron. This broad family of materials can produce many related shades, depending on where the earth was gathered and how it was prepared. A pigment is a finely divided material that supplies color. On its own, it is not yet paint. It must usually be joined with a binder, which helps the particles spread and remain upon a surface. Before that mixing begins, however, each pigment has a character of its own. It may feel coarse or smooth beneath a tool. It may form a covering layer, or allow some of the surface below to remain visible. Ochre is among the workshop's steady colors. Yellow ochre can suggest warm cloth, sunlit stone, pale soil, or a golden undertone in painted skin. Red ochre may resemble fired brick or a russet leaf. Brown ochres can deepen a shadow without drawing attention away from neighboring colors. Yellow, red, and brown ochres are durable and widely useful, although their exact appearance varies from one source to another. There is no single palette that belongs to every Renaissance workshop. Materials differ by region and date, by availability and cost, and by the customs of each group of craftspeople. The requirements of a commission matter as well. One workshop may have easy access to an earth color that another seldom uses. A costly blue may be reserved for an important passage, while familiar ochres appear throughout a picture. The colors on this bench belong only to this evening, this place, and the work waiting to be done. Beside the ochre jar rests a narrow bundle of charcoal. The sticks are a soft gray-black. Charcoal is rich in carbon and is made from burned organic matter, often wood or slender twigs. A piece can move lightly across paper and leave a pale veil. With firmer pressure, it creates a darker line. Its mark may be softened, adjusted, or lifted more readily than many marks made with ink. It is useful when an idea is still beginning to take shape. An apprentice turns one stick between two fingers, holding it by the clean end. The charcoal is light and simply made. On a nearby scrap of paper, an earlier line bends gently, then fades. It might become the edge of a sleeve, the shadow beneath a bowl, or nothing more than a brief study of movement. Even its darkest mark is not quite black in the candlelight. A silver-gray softness rests along the edge. A small piece of chalk lies nearby. Depending on its composition and on the practices of a particular region, chalk may serve as a white drawing material. It may also be used in grounds, the prepared layers placed beneath a painting. On tinted paper, a white chalk line can bring forward the crest of a fold or the place where light rests upon a cheek. It does not need to fill the whole form. A few quiet touches may be enough. The master returns the chalk to its cloth, then reaches for a covered blue pigment. The lid is lifted carefully and held steady so that the powder remains undisturbed. This blue is azurite, a mineral containing copper. Before it is fully prepared and mixed, it can appear granular, like tiny fragments of an evening sky. Its character may vary according to the mineral itself and the way it has been processed. Azurite was generally less costly than ultramarine, although it was still valuable and treated with care. Nearby is a covered green, perhaps made from malachite, another copper mineral. Its hue recalls green stone, old leaves, or water beneath shade. The lid remains in place tonight. There is no need to uncover every jar simply to admire it. In a well-ordered room, materials wait until they are needed. One smaller vessel is set apart from the others. It may contain an especially costly color prepared from lapis lazuli. From this stone came ultramarine, a blue prized for its depth and expense. A commission might specify where ultramarine should be used, how much could be allowed, or who would bear its cost. A brilliant blue could therefore be both a color and a carefully considered part of an agreement. The container remains covered. Its presence is enough. Other vivid pigments were known in Renaissance workshops. Vermilion, a bright red based on mercury sulfide, could provide a strong and brilliant color. Lead white was an important opaque white pigment. Yet lead white is poisonous, and vermilion also requires careful handling. Some historical colors contained lead, mercury, arsenic, or reactive copper compounds. The workers do not scatter such materials across the bench. Hazardous colors are kept covered, already prepared, or handled in controlled portions with deliberate care. Nothing is blown into the air, nothing is touched without reason. The reminder passes quietly through the room, and the lids settle back into place. The bench becomes orderly once more. Not every color began as earth or mineral. Colorants drawn from certain plants or insects could be fixed onto an insoluble material to create translucent pigments known as lakes. Unlike many dense mineral colors, a lake pigment could allow light to pass through a thin painted layer. These colors had their own uses and their own costs. Like the mineral pigments, they were selected according to the needs of the work. Still, the bench does not need to become a catalog of every material known to painters. Tonight only a few colors are required. There is warm ochre, soft charcoal, pale chalk, and the measured blue of azurite. Nearby, the green remains covered and the costly blue waits untouched. It is a restrained palette, sufficient for the studies and preparations at hand. The apprentice returns the charcoal to its narrow bundle. The sticks settle together with the faintest dry sound. The chalk is wrapped in cloth. The azurite vessel is closed, and the smaller, more costly container remains beneath its cover. One by one, the jars are moved farther from the candle. They are arranged where no passing sleeve can catch them and no careless movement can overturn them. Rounded jar beside shallow cup, cloth cover beside fitted lid. Each vessel returns to its proper place. Only the yellow ochre stays upon the bench. A modest portion has already been measured into a shallow cup. It is neither rare nor brilliant, but it is dependable. Under the candlelight, it resembles warm earth after rain, though it remains dry and neatly contained. Its surface is still. Its color is quiet. The apprentice carries the cup toward a smooth stone set flat upon the work table. The stone has been cleaned and made ready. Its pale surface catches a narrow band of light. Beside it waits a rounded grinding tool called a muller, broad at the base and comfortable in the hand. For a moment, nothing moves. The other colors rest inside their jars. The charcoal lies wrapped in its bundle. The chalk is protected by cloth, and the blue minerals remain beneath their lids. Around them the wooden bench glows softly. The room holds the muted colors of clay, ash, stone, and evening sky. Then the apprentice tips the measured ochre onto the center of the grinding stone. The small mound settles without drifting. Its warm color gathers beneath the light, contained and ready. The empty cup is placed to one side. A hand reaches for the muller and rests upon its rounded top. Soon the tool will descend. Soon the ochre will spread across the smooth stone. And beneath the patient weight of the hand, the slow circles will begin. Chapter 5. Circles on the Grinding Stone. The little mound of yellow ochre rests at the center of the slab. In the steady candlelight, it holds the muted warmth of sunlit clay, though the sun has long since passed beyond the tiled roofs. Around the ochre, the stone is clean and faintly reflective, its surface made smooth for patient work. The apprentice places one hand near the table's edge and takes up the muller with the other. The tool is simple. Its broad, flat bottom meets the slab, while its rounded upper part fits securely beneath the fingers. A muller is made for grinding and dispersing pigment upon a level surface. It belongs with the flat slab, not with the deep bowl of a mortar and its pestle. Those are arranged for different work. Here the movement travels outward and around rather than downward into a hollow. In workshops of this broad time and place, grinding slabs could be made from hard stones, chosen for durability and smoothness. Historical writings mention porphyry, a particularly hard stone, among materials suited to the task. Not every workshop owns the same slab or keeps the same colors. Materials and habits vary, yet the principle remains familiar. A firm surface below, a sturdy tool above, and between them, a measured portion of pigment. Before lowering the muller, the apprentice adds a little liquid to the ochre. Only a little is needed at first. The particles darken where the drops touch them. The mound settles, and a narrow spatula draws its edges inward. More liquid may be added later if the paste requires it. It is easier to proceed gradually, watching the mixture change, than to begin with too much. The spatula passes once around the mound, the ochre gathers neatly. Then the muller descends. Its flat base meets the color, and the first movement is short and careful. The apprentice does not press with sudden force. The hand travels in a small circle, then another beside it, each path overlapping the one before. A low sandy murmur rises from the stone. Round and across, back and around, the ochre spreads beneath the muller in a thin, damp layer. At its outer edge, faint circular marks appear upon the wet stone, like rings drawn softly in earth after rain. The wrist remains loose, and the shoulder scarcely moves. Most of the work belongs to the quiet turning of the hand. Pigments often need more than a single crushing before they are suitable for paint. Even prepared color may contain particles too coarse or uneven for the work ahead. Beneath the muller, those particles are worked against the slab and dispersed through the liquid. Repeated movement helps the color spread evenly, instead of remaining in tiny gatherings or clumps. The difference is slight at first, but the hand can feel it. During the early circles, the paste offers a delicate roughness. A fine rasp comes and goes within the sound. The ochre moves more readily beneath the tool, and its surface takes on an even sheen. Still, the apprentice does not hurry. There is no single number of turns for every pigment, and no universal measure of time. One color may yield readily to the stone, another may require different pressure or longer work. Some pigments may change for the worse if grinding continues too long. Excessive grinding can alter the appearance of certain colors, or make them less useful for their intended purpose. Skill lies not in circling without end, but in noticing. The apprentice feels the resistance through the palm, listens to the soft voice of stone beneath stone, and watches the paste spread. The pace remains steady, but the material itself decides when the motion should pause. Now the muller is lifted. A broad patch of ochre lies beneath it, spread beyond the easy reach of the next small circles. The spatula returns with a gentle scrape. From the left, the apprentice gathers the paste inward. From the right, another stroke brings back the thin edge. A third collects the small crescent left behind. The ochre gathers near the center. It is no longer a dry mound, but a controlled, cohesive mixture. Nothing rises into the air. The work remains damp, contained, and close to the stone. A trace clinging to the spatula is wiped into the middle. Then the muller descends again, circle over circle. Its broad base carries the paste outward and guides it back across the same ground, though never along quite the same path. Each loop overlaps another, pressing the color through the liquid and distributing the particles more evenly. The sound has changed. What was sandy is now smoother and lower. A muted whisper of stone moving over wet stone. Beyond the shutters, the town continues its gradual settling. A distant footstep crosses a narrow lane and fades. Somewhere farther away, a door closes gently. The candle casts a warm band of light across the apprentice's fingers, the rounded tool, and the thin ochre paste. Covered jars stand along the shelves. Wrapped charcoal and pieces of chalk remain where they were placed. Nothing else needs attention. There is only the hand, the smooth stone, and the slow turning. The consistency of the paste offers clues about how the color may later behave beneath a brush. Grinding affects more than particle size. It also disperses pigment through liquid or binder, influencing the handling of the finished paint. A coarse mixture may drag or gather. A more evenly worked mixture may pass smoothly beneath a brush and lie more evenly upon a prepared surface. Yet no treatment is right for every color. One pigment may feel harder beneath the muller. Another may spread quickly. A color that benefits from patient grinding may differ from one whose appearance changes when worked too much. The worker learns through instruction, observation, and repeated practice. Again the spatula gathers the outward crescent. Again the sequence begins, pigment upon the slab, enough liquid or binder to make a controlled paste, overlapping circles, and then a pause to draw the color inward. The work follows the needs of the material rather than a rigid count. The candle flame leans slightly, then straightens. The tool travels outward, around, and inward. No movement is wasted, and none is severe. At last the grain in the sound has almost vanished. The paste no longer resists in tiny, uneven places. It moves as one quiet body of color. The apprentice slows. A final circle crosses the slab, and another follows, smaller than the first. Then the hand becomes still. The muller is placed nearby. With several gentle strokes, the spatula draws the ochre inward. The color is now smooth and even, free of visible clumps. A final pass leaves the surrounding stone almost clean. For a while nothing further is done. What began as a mound of particles now rests as a manageable paste. It must be joined with a medium suited to the surface and the work ahead. Something to carry the pigment and help hold it upon a page or prepared panel. The choice may depend upon the commission, workshop custom, and the waiting surface. Egg may be chosen. Oil may be chosen. Another carefully prepared medium may serve instead. Each will alter how the color moves, settles, and remains in place. But that choice belongs to the next quiet task. For now the muller rests beside the slab, the spatula lies along its edge, and the candle burns steadily. Upon the smooth stone, the ochre waits, ready for whatever will bind its quiet color together. Chapter 6. The color finds its binder. The ochre rests in a small, smooth pool upon the grinding stone. In the warm candlelight it appears deeper than it did as a dry powder. Every grain has been pressed and turned beneath the muller until the color is even, without a visible lump. Yet it is still only prepared a pigment. To become useful paint, it must be joined with something that will hold its particles together and help them adhere to the surface beneath them. This substance is called a binder, or sometimes a medium. Broadly speaking, paint consists of pigment and binder, color joined to the material that carries and secures it. The choice of binder affects how the paint moves, how quickly it dries, and how the finished surface appears. It may influence whether a stroke feels firm or flowing, whether an edge remains crisp or becomes soft, and whether light rests upon the surface or seems to pass through a thin layer of color. Tonight the workshop needs only a small amount of ochre paint. There is no reason to fill a large bowl. Fresh mixtures are prepared with care, in quantities suited to the task at hand. On a nearby bench stands a little cup. Beside it lies an egg. For this particular test, the craftsperson will prepare egg tempera, a familiar kind of paint in many Italian workshops. though practices differed from place to place, from one period to another, and even from one task to the next. The egg is opened carefully, and the yolk is separated. A little of its golden liquid is placed in the waiting cup. Only a small amount is needed. A few drops of water are added, and the mixture is stirred with the end of a slender wooden tool. The water loosens the yolk, making it easier to combine with the prepared color. The motion is simple and quiet. Around the edge, through the center, and around once more. A small portion of ground ochre is gathered from the slab. It meets the diluted yolk in a shallow dish. At first the two remain distinct, the warm yellow-brown pigment beside the softer gold of the egg. Then the spatula folds one into the other. The color changes slowly beneath the blade. It becomes creamy and even. It no longer scatters as dry particles might. Instead, it holds together upon the spatula and settles into a modest pool. The pigment has found its binder, and the two materials now move as paint. In modern speech, the word tempera often means egg tempera. Historically, however, the term could refer more broadly to mixtures in which pigment was tempered, or brought to a workable consistency, with a binder. Recipes and workshop habits were not identical. Even within one town, painters might prepare their colors in somewhat different ways. Egg yolk has qualities well suited to controlled work. Egg tempera can carry fine strokes and crisp details. It dries comparatively quickly, allowing one careful touch to follow another without a long delay. That quickness asks for preparation and a measured hand. The painter mixes only what is likely to be used while it is fresh. Egg-based paint is not imagined as a great bowl stored indefinitely upon a shelf. Instead, a little is made, a little is used, and more can be prepared when the work requires it. The apprentice draws the spatula through the ochre mixture again. A soft line opens behind the blade, then slowly closes. The consistency is judged by sight, touch, and experience. If the paint is too thick, it may resist the brush. If it is too thin, it may not cover as intended. Another drop of water can be added, but only after looking carefully. In this workshop, small adjustments are preferred. One drop, one turn, one quiet pause to observe. On another shelf rests a small vessel of oil. It offers a different way to bind color. Oil paint is made by suspending pigment in a drying oil. Linseed oil and walnut oil are both documented in Renaissance practice, and poppy oil was also known. Such oils do not dry simply by losing water. When exposed to air, they gradually harden, mainly through oxidation and related chemical changes. Air takes part in transforming the liquid oil into a more solid film. This process is generally slower than the drying of egg tempera. That slower change can allow a painter to soften transitions, spread broader passages, or create translucent effects with thin applications. Yet oil paint does not have one single character in every circumstance. Its behavior depends upon the chosen oil, the pigment, the preparation, the thickness of the layer, and the conditions around it. Different pigments can also behave differently in egg and oil. One color may appear more transparent in oil. Another may harden more slowly. A pigment that moves freely beneath the brush in egg may feel heavier, softer, or more flowing in another medium. Workshop knowledge grows through repeated observation. A little color is mixed, a test is made, the result is watched and remembered. The Italian Renaissance was not marked by one single moment when every painter set aside tempera and began using oil. Change came gradually and unevenly. In the late 15th century, paintings could include tempera, oil, mixtures of materials, or carefully planned layers made with different binders. One workshop might favor a particular method for its panels, while another might choose according to the commission. Even within the same room, no single medium had to serve every purpose. Painters adapted their materials to the surface and to the work ahead. The craftsperson touches a clean spatula to the oil vessel and lifts no more than a shining bead. It catches the candlelight briefly before being placed beside a second portion of ochre. The pigment darkens slightly as the oil enters it. Slow turns of the blade bring the two together. The mixture follows the spatula in a longer trail, with a gentle sheen upon its surface. Beside it, the egg-bound paint seems firmer and more direct. Neither is declared the only proper paint. Each has its own usefulness. The task, the surface, and the desired effect will help guide the choice. Water, too, can carry pigment. It can spread color, moisten a dry mixture, and help prepare certain paints. But water alone is not a durable binder for painting upon a wooden panel. Once it evaporates, it does not leave enough material behind to secure the pigment permanently. There is, however, an important setting in which pigment carried in water becomes fixed by another material. In true fresco, color is applied to wet lime plaster. As the plaster dries and chemically sets, the pigment becomes fixed within the wall's surface. Fresco belongs to walls and fresh plaster. It is a different process from painting upon a portable wooden panel. Here, in this quiet room, no wall of wet plaster waits. There is only the grinding stone, the two small mixtures, and a spare prepared surface used for testing. A fine brush is drawn first through the egg tempera. One narrow stroke is laid down. The ochre leaves the brush cleanly and forms a controlled line. Beside it, a second stroke is made with the oil-bound color. This mark settles more slowly. Its edge appears a little softer, and its surface holds a faint sheen in the angled candlelight. The craftsperson studies both strokes without haste. There is no finished picture to admire, and none is needed. The purpose is simply to learn how the color behaves tonight. The two marks rest side by side, quiet evidence of two possible methods. For the task ahead, the chosen paint is gathered into a small covered cup and protected from dust. The remaining pigment stays upon the slab, ready for another careful mixture, if one is needed. Before the color can travel farther across paper or prepared panel, the workshop must choose the tool that will carry it: a soft brush, a quill, a stick of charcoal, or a fine point of metal. Chapter 7: Quills, Chalk, and Fine Brush Tips. The two small samples of color remain on the prepared surface. One stroke is firm and clear, the other is softer at its edge, with a faint sheen in the angled candlelight. Nearby, the covered cup waits beneath a steady flame. Before more paint is laid down, the craftsperson turns to a shallow wooden tray at the side of the bench. Here are the tools that carry thought into visible form: quills, brushes, metal points, charcoal, chalk, a stylus, a straight edge, and a folded compass. Each answers differently to pressure, angle, speed, and surface. Learning to draw or paint is also a lesson in listening through the fingertips. The hand notices a quill flexing, a brush bending, or charcoal meeting the grain of a sheet. With practice, these small responses become familiar, and the tool begins to feel like a quiet partner. The craftsperson first chooses a soft brush. Its light handle ends in the hollow shaft of a feather quill, where the hairs are gathered. Renaissance writers such as Cennino Cennini described brushes made this way. Different quill sizes held different amounts of hair. A small quill made a fine brush, while a larger one supported a broader gathering. The soft hair Cennini called miniver generally meant squirrel fur in his setting, rather than the modern rabbit hair sometimes linked with a similar name. Smooth and flexible, the hairs gather into a precise point when slightly dampened. The brush is dipped in clean water and drawn gently across a dish edge until the excess falls away. On a spare piece of prepared material, the craftsperson makes one curving stroke. It begins finely, widens under light pressure, then narrows as the brush rises. The single line is a quiet demonstration of balance. A soft brush suits delicate lines and smooth passages of color. It can follow a form, join one tone to another, or place a point of light. Yet it asks for discipline. Too much liquid opens the point, and too much pressure spreads the hairs. The hand holds the handle lightly, letting the brush bend in return. Beside it lie brushes of stiffer hog bristle. They do not gather into the same delicate point, but carry color with greater firmness. One is pressed lightly against the test surface. Its hairs separate into small tracks. Drawn sideways, it leaves a broad textured passage, while held upright it gives a narrower mark. The soft brush glides and gathers. The bristle brush presses and spreads. After the trial, the firmer brush is cleaned and aligned with the others. The craftsperson next lifts a feather prepared not as a brush holder, but as a pen. Its shaft has been cut into a nib, whose careful shape helps govern the flow of ink. The nib touches dark ink, releases the excess, and pauses above a practice sheet. Then it meets the surface. A quill flexes slightly. At one angle it gives a narrow line, turned, lowered, or pressed differently. It may make a broader one. A short row of straight and curving trials lets the hand feel how much ink the quill holds and how freely it moves tonight. The pen is wiped and placed beside the small knife used to maintain its cut. Farther along the table lies a metal-tipped instrument, one of the family used for metal point drawing. Silver point is familiar, but not every faint metal point line should be called silver point. Other metals could also be used, and appearance alone may not identify them. Metal point requires a specially prepared surface. Ordinary smooth paper does not readily receive the mark. The support needs a slightly abrasive coating, even and refined to the touch, yet textured enough to draw a trace from the tip. Across a prepared scrap, the instrument leaves a slender gray line, quieter than ink and lighter than charcoal beneath the warm light. Metal point does not invite the easy adjustment of charcoal, so the hand proceeds carefully, with light pressure and controlled turns. Beside it rests a pointed stylus. A stylus need leave no color at all. It can score or indent a guideline that appears only when light reaches it from the right angle. The craftsperson draws such a line and tilts the scrap toward the candle. The indentation gleams, then almost disappears when tilted back. A wooden straight edge can guide the stylus in a measured path. Nearby, a compass waits with its legs folded. Together they assist with borders, measured structures, circles, and other geometric construction. Their presence is orderly and reassuring. An image may begin with observation, but also with proportion. A measured interval, quiet border, or arc of a circle can establish structure before color arrives. A straight edge is returned to its place, the compass remains closed, and the craftsperson reaches for charcoal. Soft, dark, and immediate, charcoal moves across the paper with a faint whisper. A sharper edge makes a narrow mark. Laid flat, it shades a wider area. A fingertip softens the line into muted shadow, and a cloth lifts some away, leaving the center pale. Charcoal welcomes adjustment when searching for a position, testing a curve, or changing a line. Yet the same softness asks for care. A sleeve, palm, or accidental touch may blur the work. The charcoal returns to its compartment, a faint trace still on the craftsperson's fingertips. Other compartments hold black, red, and white chalk, materials that became increasingly important in Renaissance drawing, though their use and popularity varied across places, periods, and generations. Red chalk leaves a warm line, black chalk gives deeper accents, and white chalk brings light to a tinted surface, where it shows more clearly than on untouched white paper. Each piece is tested briefly. A restrained red line, a darker black stroke, then a small passage of white brightness on a muted scrap. Together they show how fully the surface participates. White chalk needs contrast, metal point needs a prepared abrasive ground, charcoal answers the grain, ink follows the quill's cut and angle. The tool never makes the mark alone. Pressure matters, as do contact angle and surface preparation. There is no familiar modern graphite pencil on this bench. That convenient instrument belongs to another material history. Here the choices are charcoal, chalk, ink, metal point, brushes, and styluses. Each offers possibilities and sets gentle limits. The trials now form a neat row. No finished image has appeared, and none is required. The evening's purpose is readiness. The soft brush gathered to its damp point, the bristle brush showed its firmer path, the quill flexed, the metal tip traced gray, the stylus left an almost invisible channel. Charcoal softened into shadow, and the chalks placed warmth, darkness, and light. For a while, the craftsperson studies the marks without haste. Then each tool returns to its place. Brushes lie together in the tray, charcoal rests away from clean sheets, chalks are separated by color. The straight edge lies flat, the compass stays folded, and the quill pen is set beside a small stack of pale paper. The sheet seems plain, yet lifted safely beside the candle. Faint variations emerge within its fibers. They belong to the paper itself. As the tools grow still, attention turns from marks to the sheet receiving them. Chapter 8. Rags, Water, and the Traveling Sheet. The upper sheet is lifted from the stack and held nearer to the candle. It does not shine like polished metal or glow like thin silk. Its brightness is softer. Warm light enters the paper and settles among the fibers, revealing faint lines that were almost invisible while the sheet lay flat upon the bench. The paper has a quiet history. Before it reached this workshop, passed through the hands of merchants and porters, and was carried from town to town, it began as cloth. High-quality European paper in this period is generally made not from wood pulp, as much paper will be in later centuries, but from linen and hemp rags. The cloth has already lived one useful life. Its fibers were prepared, spun, woven, cut, and used. The fabric was washed, mended, and used again. Only when it could no longer serve well in its familiar form did it become material for paper making. At the mill, rags are sorted because different cloths can produce different qualities of paper. They are cleaned, cut into smaller pieces, and broken down. What once held together as woven thread must be opened into loose fibers. In Italian paper-making centers, including Fabriano, water-powered stampers help perform this patient work. Moving water drives machinery that raises and lowers heavy stampers, beating the damp rags again and again. Gradually, the threads separate, and the woven structure disappears. Cloth becomes soft, fibers pulp. Not every sheet in an Italian workshop comes from Fabriano. Paper is made in several places, and supplies arrive from different mills and regions. Yet important paper-making centers develop and refine methods that spread more widely. Water, machinery, old cloth, and human judgment are brought together to create something new. Imagine a vat filled with water and diluted pulp. Pale fibers drift through the liquid, moving with every gentle current. Beside the vat, a papermaker holds a mold, a rectangular wooden frame fitted with fine wires. A removable rim helps contain the pulp and gives the forming sheet its general shape. The mold is lowered into the vat and lifted with a practiced movement. Water flows across it. The papermaker gives the frame a controlled shake, helping the floating fibers spread, cross, and interlace. Water drains through the wires, leaving a thin, wet mat of linen and hemp fibers. Fragile at first, this layer is held together by countless entangled strands. The papermaker transfers it from the mold. Another wet sheet follows, then another, until many sheets form a careful stack. Pressing removes more water. Later, the sheets are separated and dried, and their fibers settle closely together. Around a handmade sheet there may be a slight waviness called a decal edge. It forms where watery pulp gathers at the boundary of the mold. Some sheets retain this soft, uneven margin, or cut before reaching an artist's bench. The hand shifts, allowing candlelight to pass through another part of the paper. Fine parallel marks become clear. These are laid lines, left by the closely spaced wires of the mold. Crossing them at wider intervals are chain lines, formed by supporting wires beneath. Neither kind is drawn onto the finished paper. Both arise as wet fibers settle over the mold's wire structure. Where pulp lies over a wire, the sheet remains slightly thinner. When held toward a light, those places become visible. On some paper, a small emblem, letter, or simple design appears among the lines. This is a watermark. A design made from wire is attached to the mold, leaving a thinner area as the pulp settles. Once the sheet is dry, the mark can be seen when light passes through it. A watermark may offer clues about a maker, mill, type of paper, or commercial origin, though such clues are not always simple. Designs may be reused, copied, altered, or worn. Folding and cutting may leave only part of a mark. On some sheets it is faint. On others no watermark is clearly visible. The sheet is lowered. Without light passing through it, the surface looks plain again. A thumb remains near the edge, holding it carefully without making a crease. After pressing and drying, many sheets receive a size made from animal gelatin. This treatment reduces absorbency. Without it, bare fibers would take in liquid too readily, and ink from a quill might spread through tiny spaces in the sheet. Sizing helps ink remain nearer the surface, allowing a controlled, legible mark. Even so, sheets differ according to the rags, preparation of the pulp, construction of the mold, thickness of the wet layer, pressing, drying, and sizing. Some are smoother or firmer than others. An experienced hand learns to notice these variations through sight, touch, and careful use. By the middle of the 15th century, paper is more widely available across much of Europe than in earlier generations. Merchant networks carried bundles between paper-making districts, cities, and smaller towns. Some sheets travel far, others are made nearer where they are sold. Paper passes through storehouses and marketplaces before arriving in workshops like this one. Its wider availability encourages exploratory drawing. An idea may be tested in charcoal before being developed further. A figure may be adjusted, the fall of cloth studied, or the curve of a hand tried again. A sheet can hold the first quiet movement of an idea. Yet paper is not casual waste or universally cheap. Good sheets remain valuable workshop materials. They are counted, stored, kept dry, and handled carefully because cloth, water, skilled labor, and transport have brought them to the bench. Both sides may be used. A page bearing one study can be turned over for another. A fragment may receive a note, measurement, pattern, or trial of the pen. Even a narrow piece remains useful. Sound paper is not discarded without thought. Paper does not immediately replace parchment for every purpose. Parchment, made from prepared animal skin, continues to serve for many books, documents, and special works. The two materials exist beside one another, their use depending upon purpose, custom, availability, and cost. For drawing and planning, paper offers a welcoming surface. It can receive a quick line or a measured design. It can be folded, cut, ruled, turned over, and studied again. It can carry an idea between benches, or preserve a small experiment until it is needed. Once more, the craftsperson raises the sheet toward the flame. Fine laid lines emerge, crossed by wider chain lines. Perhaps there is the faint suggestion of a watermark, though the design is incomplete, and no firm meaning is drawn from it. Between those pale traces, linen and hemp fibers rest together. They are no longer cloth or drifting pulp. Pressed, dried, and sized, they have become a finished surface waiting for a mark. The page has traveled through many changes. Cloth became rag. Rag became fiber. Fiber moved through water, settled upon wire, and formed a wet layer. The layer was pressed and dried. The finished sheet entered trade, passed from hand to hand, and arrived in the warm stillness of the workshop. Now its traveling is over, at least for tonight. The sheet is lowered and placed gently upon the bench. A straight edge rests beside it, and a small weight is set at one corner to keep the paper smooth. The candle continues to glow. The quill remains nearby. The pale page lies ready for the next careful task, waiting to become a page for drawing. Chapter 9. A quiet page made ready. The small weight remains at one corner of the sheet, holding it gently against the wooden bench. Beside it lies the straight edge, its long side worn smooth by repeated use. The paper is not perfectly white. It has the soft, pale tone of linen and hemp fibers, with tiny variations that become visible when the candlelight moves across the surface. For a little while, no one touches it. The worker studies the sheet as it is, noticing its shape and the slight unevenness of its edges. Paper in this workshop does not come in modern, standardized sizes. A large sheet may be folded or cut into several useful pieces. A narrow remainder may serve for a note, a measurement, or a quick trial of chalk. There is no need to waste a serviceable fragment. A clean hand rests near the lower edge. The small weight is moved from one corner to another, and the straight edge is placed across the surface. With a knife, the worker trims away a rough strip. The blade travels slowly, guided by the smooth edge of the wood. There is only the faintest sound as the paper fibers part. The narrow strip is not thrown away. It is placed with other fragments in a shallow tray. Another hand may later use it to test a pen, try a line of chalk, or record a simple measurement. Even the back of the present sheet remains available. Artists may use both sides of paper, turning a page over when one study is finished, or when another idea asks for room. The sheet is smaller now, though not by much. Its newly cut edge lies straight against the bench. It could be used in its natural pale tone. Many drawings begin upon paper much as it arrives in the workshop. Not every page requires a border, a grid, or a colored ground. Some sheets are ready to welcome the first mark without further preparation. This sheet, however, will receive a faint color. A small bowl is brought near. Within it is a thin wash, mixed with enough liquid to spread lightly across the fibers. The color is subdued, somewhere between a warm gray and a softened brown. In other workshops, prepared papers might be pinkish, greenish, gray, brown, or blue. Blue paper becomes especially associated with Venetian drawing practice, although its use is not exclusive to Venice. Materials and preferences vary from one region to another, from one workshop to another, and from one purpose to the next. This is not modern, commercially dyed paper, uniform from edge to edge. The tone can be prepared here in the workshop and applied by hand. Small variations may remain, becoming part of the sheet's quiet character. A broad, soft brush is dipped into the bowl. The excess wash is touched away at the rim. Then the brush passes over the paper in one measured stroke. The sheet darkens beneath it. A second stroke follows the first, meeting its edge before the wash can dry. The worker does not hurry, yet does not linger too long in one place. The liquid must remain light and thin. It is meant to give the paper a middle value, a tone resting between the deepest shadow and the clearest light. Stroke after stroke crosses the sheet. For a moment, the wet surface appears glossy in the candlelight. Each fresh band catches a narrow reflection. The reflections tremble softly as the brush moves on. Then the moisture begins to settle. The shine slowly withdraws. Gloss becomes softness. Softness becomes a quiet, matte tone. The worker leaves the page untouched while it dries. The brush is set aside. Across the room, someone closes a small box. A sleeve brushes lightly against wood. Beyond the shutters, the town has grown quieter, and the distant bells no longer seem to divide the evening. Their sound simply rests within it. Nothing needs to happen quickly. The wash continues to dry. A last glimmer remains near one edge, then fades. The surface is no longer bright with moisture. It has become calm and even, though the texture of the paper can still be seen beneath the color. When the page is ready, the small weight returns to one corner. The paper has changed only modestly. Its pale fibers now carry a gentle, earth-colored veil. Upon a tinted ground, a draftsman can work in two directions. Dark chalk, charcoal, or ink may establish shadow. White chalk or a little white paint may establish light. These pale accents are known as heightening. Heightening adds touches of brightness, allowing selected places to rise from the middle tone. The paper itself remains between dark and light. It need not be completely covered. Its quiet color can hold much of the image, while shadow gathers on one side and brightness appears on the other. But those later marks have not yet arrived. First, the page is measured. The straight edge is turned and aligned with the newly trimmed side. A pointed stylus is placed beside it. The worker draws the stylus gently along the edge. It leaves no dark trail. Instead, the point presses a slender path into the surface. Viewed directly, the line seems almost absent. When the worker inclines the page toward the candle, the mark appears. A minute ridge catches the light and a thread of shadow forms beside it. The sheet is lowered. The line disappears again. The page is tilted once more, and the line quietly returns. Another ruled mark could be made at a different edge. But there is no need to surround every drawing with a formal border, nor must every sheet be divided by a grid. Measured lines are useful for some purposes. Other drawings grow more freely from observation, memory, or practice. Tonight, one restrained line is enough. It offers the hand a reference, without commanding everything that may follow. The paper is lifted. It is folded lightly, without pressing a deep or final crease. One side is brought toward the other, and the edges are compared. Then the sheet is opened again, and smoothed beneath a clean palm. A fold may help the worker find a center, or consider a division. On another occasion, a sheet might be folded for a different use. Here the movement is simple and brief. The page rests flat once more. Again there is a pause. The worker looks before making the first visible mark. A piece of dark chalk is chosen. Its point has already been shaped, though not too sharply. The hand hovers over the middle of the tinted page. It waits there for a breath, then descends. A line appears. It is so light that it might almost be dust resting upon the surface. The line does not declare a finished form. It searches. A second faint mark curves away from the first. A third begins, travels a little way, and stops before reaching the edge. The hand withdraws. The worker studies not only the marks, but also the spaces between them. Nothing more is added for a while. In a preliminary sketch, the earliest lines may remain delicate and uncertain. Later selected forms can be clarified with firmer chalk or ink. Some faint traces may remain visible beneath the clearer marks. Others may recede into the tone of the paper, preserving a quiet record of the hand's first thought. Another line is added, then the chalk lifts. Another pause follows. The candle flame holds steady. The straight edge lies unused beside the page. The small weight keeps the corner from rising, while the worker looks again. No one watching could yet say with confidence what the drawing will become. It may remain a study and be kept among other sheets. It may become a plan for work in another material. It may be turned over tomorrow, its reverse offered to a second set of lines. Even a fragment may find another purpose later. For now it is enough that the page holds a few careful marks. The dark chalk is set down. Near it rests a small piece of white, ready for heightening if light accents are wanted later. On this middle-toned ground, The white could establish brightness, while the darker marks deepen the shadows. Yet there is no need to add either one tonight. The tinted surface waits between dark and pale. The first lines rest quietly upon it. The faint stylus mark remains almost hidden, appearing only when the light passes across the paper at the proper angle. One sheet, one straight edge, one nearly invisible line, one thin wash, now dry and matte beneath the candlelight. The worker draws a clean hand away from the page and lets it rest undisturbed. Beside the paper lies another waiting surface. It is a panel of pale wood, smooth in outline and firm beneath the fingertips. The page may remain a thought, a study, or a plan. The wooden panel will ask for a different kind of preparation, with patient layers laid across its calm and solid face. Chapter 10. The Pale Panel and its First Lines. Beside the drawing paper rests a wooden panel. It is not yet a picture, although much patient work has already passed over it. Its narrow edges still reveal the warm, quiet color of timber, while its broad face has become pale and smooth. In the candlelight, the prepared surface seems almost to hold a gentle light of its own. Poplar was a common choice for painted panels in many Italian workshops, although it was never the only wood available. Other timbers were used according to region, supply, cost, and purpose. Whatever the species, the wood required careful consideration. Timber was seasoned and allowed to dry before it became a support for painting. A wide panel might require several boards carefully joined. The panel maker watched for knots, studied the direction of the grain, and remained mindful of the natural movement of wood. Timber responds to the air around it. It may swell slightly when moisture increases, then settle again in drier weather. If its movement is not respected, it may bend or warp. So the calm, pale surface on the bench began long before this evening. It began with the choosing of timber, the seasoning of the boards, and the careful joining and shaping of the support. Beneath every future line lies an understanding of the wood itself. The panel before us is modest in size. One day perhaps it will hold a small devotional image, suited to a quiet room or a private corner. Along its edges, where the pale preparation ends, narrow bands of wood remain visible. The contrast is restful. Warm brown surrounds a field of soft ivory. Before the pale ground was applied, the wood could be brushed with size. Here, the word size does not refer to the panel's measurements. Size is a dilute glue used to control how readily a surface absorbs liquid. It could be applied to wood, cloth, or paper. Each of these materials can draw in moisture. A layer of size reduces that absorbency and prepares the support for the stages that follow. Sometimes linen was applied over a panel or over the joints between separate boards. It could help create a continuous surface across the timber beneath. Yet linen was not used on every panel. Methods varied by workshop, period, region, and commission. The panel on this bench represents one possible preparation among many, rather than a rule followed everywhere. Over the sized wood came the pale ground. In Italian panel painting, such grounds often contain gypsum mixed with animal glue. This preparation is commonly called gesso. It lies beneath painted color and, where needed, beneath gilding. It offers a surface that is smoother and paler than bare timber, ready to receive the first stages of a design. Several coats of ground could be applied, one layer settled over another, filling shallow hollows and softening the small variations of the wooden face. The panel ceased to look like bare wood. Its surface became even, light, and quietly receptive. This preparation did not belong to a single evening. Each coat needed time. Moisture had to leave the surface and the ground had to settle before further work continued. The workshop understood that waiting was part of the craft. Some things were accomplished by the movement of a hand. Others were completed slowly by time. Tonight the panel is already mostly prepared. Only a small area remains to be checked. An apprentice steadies the support, while a more experienced hand passes a leveling tool across the ground. A soft scrape moves through the room, then fades. A little pale dust gathers at the edge and is gently brushed away. The tool passes once more. Scrape, pause, and brush, then silence again. The ground could be scraped and polished until it became remarkably smooth. Beneath the fingertips, this panel feels almost like a still sheet of pale stone, though the darker edges remember the wood within. The surface is turned slightly toward the candle. Light travels across it at a shallow angle. A raised ridge would catch a narrow shadow, while a hollow would interrupt the glow. Here the light moves evenly. The face of the panel holds a broad and quiet sheen. It is ready for its first lines. These preliminary marks are called an underdrawing because they will remain beneath the painted layers. They help establish the placement of forms and the measured relationships between them. A hand may be positioned, a sleeve may be arranged, the fall of drapery may be tested before color is added. Some underdrawing lines will eventually disappear beneath paint. Others may remain faintly present, hidden from ordinary view, while still supporting the design above them. An artist could draw directly upon the prepared ground, yet a design could also be planned elsewhere and transferred onto the panel. On another bench rests a full-size working drawing. Such a drawing was called a cartoon, from the Italian word cartone. In this setting, a cartoon is not a humorous picture. It is a practical preparatory drawing made at the scale required for the finished work. There were several ways to carry a design from paper to a prepared surface. A stylus could follow the contours of the drawing, leaving faint indentations in the ground beneath. The marks might be almost invisible until candlelight crossed them at the proper angle. In another method, the back of the drawing could be rubbed with chalk or charcoal. When the lines on the front were retraced, material from the back would leave a copy on the panel. A smaller design could also be enlarged through a grid. The artist could study one measured square at a time, carrying the forms from the small drawing into corresponding squares on the larger surface. And then there was pouncing. For this method, tiny holes were pricked along the outlines of a drawing. Charcoal or chalk powder was gently passed through those holes. When the paper was lifted, rows of small dots remained behind, preserving the principal shapes. The modest cartoon used tonight shows only a few forms. There is the curve of a lowered hand, the quiet line of a sleeve, and one broad fold of drapery. Its outlines have already been pricked with many tiny openings. The paper is laid over the pale panel and kept from shifting. A small cloth pouch holding charcoal powder is brought near. It touches the drawing lightly. Tap, pause, and move. Tap, pause, and move. The motion remains restrained and even. There is no need for haste, and no need for more powder than the transfer requires. Only a small amount passes through the holes, leaving a quiet record on the ground below. At last the pouch is set aside. The paper is lifted slowly from one corner. A constellation of gray dots appears upon the ivory surface. The marks curve around the fingers, turn softly at the wrist, and descend into the folds of cloth. From a short distance, the dots seem almost to join into continuous lines. Seen closely, each remains distinct, and together they whisper of the forms yet to come, one small point following another. A fine brush can now reinforce the useful contours with diluted ink or paint. The worker does not need to follow every dot. The transferred design offers guidance, not an unchangeable command. A line may be selected, clarified, or gently adjusted. The brush follows the outer edge of the hand. One finger is narrowed slightly. The turn of the wrist is made smoother. A fold in the drapery is allowed to fall more softly than it did in the cartoon. Between these darker strokes, some of the pounced dots remain visible. They wait like a faint path beside the firmer line. Not every composition began with a cartoon, just as not every panel was covered with linen. Some artists drew directly on the prepared ground. Some designs were transferred with a stylus. Some were copied from chalked or charcoaled backs. Others were pounced through tiny holes, or enlarged through measured grids. Workshop practice varied. Local habits, available materials, individual skill, and the needs of a particular commission all influenced the method. No single process belonged to every painter or every panel. This evening, only a few lines are added. There is no need to carry the work further. The timber was chosen and seasoned long before tonight. Its boards were joined as needed, with attention to knots, grain, and natural movement. Size reduced the absorbency of the wood. The pale gesso ground was built through patient coats of gypsum and glue. Each stage received its necessary drying time. The surface was scraped, smoothed, and polished. Now the first outline rests upon it. A hand, a sleeve, a calm fall of cloth. Tomorrow, more lines may be considered. Later, the pale ground may receive gilding or layers of painted color. Those stages belong to other hours. The work of this hour is small, complete, and quiet. The fine brush is laid beside the stylus. The charcoal pouch is folded closed. The cartoon is returned to the bench, its rows of tiny holes still tracing the familiar contours. Candlelight passes once more across the panel. It touches the warm brown edge, then moves over the smooth ivory face. The dark lines remain delicate. The pounced dots rest between them, light as scattered dust. The panel is still mostly pale. Most of its work lies ahead. Yet beneath all that may come later. The first quiet design has begun.